Welcome, listeners. I'm Silas, your sleepy storyteller, pulling you down the rabbit hole of time, where dreams and memories intertwine. If you enjoy these videos, please tap the like button. It really helps. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can keep drifting along on your sleepy journey through history. And before we wander down the rabbit hole, share your city and time in the comments. I love imagining our journey threading through every ticking clock. Now, take a moment to find a comfortable resting position. Close your eyes gently, and in your own time, allow yourself to sink into the quiet atmosphere of the past as we begin our slow journey together. I find myself stepping into the dense, humid air of Guyana in 1978, moving toward a settlement that hums with the uneasy pulse of controlled life, Jonestown. The morning is thick with mist, curling around towering tree trunks and draping the jungle in a muted, ghostly green. The scent of wet earth, decomposing leaves, and the faint tang of sweat hangs in the air, heavy, almost oppressive, wrapping around me like a cloak. The path before me is narrow, winding, a ribbon of packed dirt overrun with weeds and tangled roots that force careful steps. Each footfall presses into the soft earth, kicking up tiny motes of dust and leaf fragments. On either side, the wooden structures of the settlement appear through the mist. Simple homes, low shacks with corrugated roofs, walls peeling with sun-worn paint, their edges softened by moss and mildew. Even in this state of decay, there is a strange care in their arrangement. Small painted fences, neat gardens, laundry hung with purpose. The ordinary beauty of these details strikes me. People live here. People love here. Clothes flap softly in the breeze. Shirts, dresses, and pants tracing silent, ethereal arcs across the air, whispering the quiet rhythm of domestic life. Children's laughter rings out in fits and starts, tentative and careful, as if testing the safety of the morning. Adults move with deliberate motions, buckets in hand, tools at work, eyes darting now and then toward the shaded periphery where the guards keep watch. I feel the tension in the air. It is subtle, almost invisible, yet it thrums under the surface, a quiet hum beneath the apparent calm. The stillness here is palpable. It is more than quiet. It is a weight pressing on my shoulders, a silence so thick it seems to hum against my ears. The jungle hums alongside it, insects weaving a constant drone beneath the birds' hesitant calls. A rooster cries once, sharp and cutting, and the sound reverberates across the settlement. I can hear the scrape of a broom along wooden planks, the hollow knock of a bucket on stone, the soft murmur of voices that drift just above the hush of dawn. Everything feels deliberate, rehearsed, controlled. I notice the first faint signs of unease. A man pauses mid-step with a water pail, glancing toward a guard standing silently near a row of shacks. His shoulders stiffen, his pace quickens, the routine of the morning tempered by a silent compliance. Nearby, a mother gathers her child, adjusting his shirt with precise care, urging him forward with quiet but firm insistence. Their movements are almost choreographed by the invisible rules of the commune, rules I know will tighten as the day unfolds. As I step further in, the communal hall comes into view. Its windows, open to catch the morning light, reveal a bare wooden floor streaked with dust and the patterns of long use. It is calm now, quiet, yet I can feel the weight of its future. Soon, voices will rise here in commands and coerced speeches. Soon, obedience will be demanded. Even in its silence, the hall radiates a sense of expectancy, a tension that creeps into the skin and presses on the chest. Everywhere I look, there are traces of ordinary life, delicate and haunting in their impermanence. A faded plastic toy truck rests on a porch. A doll, with one eye missing, leans against a tree. A single shoe stands half buried in dirt. Pots hang from hooks. Letters are stacked neatly on tables. Small handwritten signs with scripture verse lean against walls. I imagine the hands that made these homes, that cooked the meals, that raised these children, that held the faith they believed would save them. And I honor them, because each moment, each movement, carries a fragility I cannot shake. The jungle presses closer as I continue down the central path. Trees arch overhead, their branches tangled, leaves dripping with condensation. The filtered sunlight turns everything into shifting shades of green, the mist curling and twisting like living smoke. Each step seems amplified in the thick air. I can hear my own heartbeat, loud and steady, a metronome against the hushed symphony of Jonestown's morning. The subtle aroma of wet foliage and soil dominates, punctuated by the faint smoke of cooking fires. A dog barks softly somewhere, then goes silent, attentive to the human rhythm it has learned. As I pass through the homes, I observe the routines that will soon seem unbearably poignant. Children sweep porches, brush paths of dirt, deliver small messages or meals. Adults carry buckets or tools, their bodies conditioned to long hours, their faces marked with both pride and exhaustion. And yet, there is a quiet tension threading through their movements, a wariness almost imperceptible, a response to the presence of authority, to the invisible commands that shape every action. I pause near a small yard, watching a boy carry a basket of fruit. His eyes meet mine, wide, bright, innocent. A laugh escapes him, tentative, full of life, fleeting. I feel an ache in my chest, knowing that this laughter, this light, will soon vanish. A silent acknowledgement passes between us, a wordless promise to remember him, to honor the potential and joy of a life that will end too soon. Along the way, I see the subtle architecture of fear and control. Guards stand quietly in shaded corners, scanning the settlement with a practiced detachment. Their presence is quiet, almost ceremonial, yet it bends the morning rhythm into something measured, restrained. The people move around them with careful efficiency, their glances fleeting, their expressions guarded. It is a delicate dance, one played out daily, a choreography of obedience under a veneer of communal normalcy. The settlement's central road unfolds before me, broad enough for tractors and trucks, lined with shacks, communal buildings, and small gardens. Steam curls from cooking fires, and the scent of food lingers faintly, mingling with the humid morning air. There is a rhythm here, a pulse of ordinary life, that the people cling to, perhaps unaware of its fragility, perhaps too accustomed to concealment to see the danger looming on the edge of perception. As I walk, my senses absorb everything: the soft rustle of leaves, the distant hum of running water, the muted squeals of children at play, the low murmur of adults exchanging words that carry meaning beyond my comprehension. There is a tension here that cannot be ignored, a silent foreshadowing that presses against the air like the weight of unseen clouds. It is in the pause between sounds, in the hesitant laughter, in the quick glance of a mother to a child, in the careful step of a man carrying a bucket. And yet, amidst the tension, there is life. I see small acts of love and normalcy: flowers tending gardens, a mother tying a child's hair, a father guiding his child to fetch water. There is devotion here: faith, hope, trust, resilience, but it is tethered to a web of manipulation, of isolation, of obedience that has grown over the years. I honor the people I see, not as passive victims, but as humans striving within impossible circumstances, their lives rich with love, community, and vulnerability. The morning unfolds like a painting: layers of color, shadow, sound, and scent blending into one. I breathe deeply, letting the humid air fill my lungs, letting the sounds and smells anchor me in this fragile moment of existence. Every step I take is deliberate, reverent. Each movement, each observation, carries with it the weight of history, the sorrow of what is to come, and the quiet honor of witnessing lives as they exist, just before they are forever altered. This is Jonestown on the morning of November 18th, 1978. It is calm. It is ordinary. It is alive. And yet, beneath the surface, there is a tension, a silent awareness of what will soon come, woven into the very air that clings to my skin. As I walk among these people, observing, listening, feeling, I carry the sorrow, the reverence, and the respect for every individual: parents, children, elders. Each heartbeat a story, each gesture a testament to human existence, fleeting yet profound. The path widens as I step beyond the simple homes and narrow lanes of the settlement. I find myself moving toward what was meant to be the heart of Jonestown, the communal spaces where people gathered, shared meals, held meetings, and imagined a life built on unity and trust. Now, in the quiet morning, they seem almost spectral, heavy with the echoes of lives that will soon be altered forever. The central hall rises before me, modest but imposing, its wooden beams stretching skyward, darkened by time and humidity. The walls are simple planks, patched where rot had tried to claim them. Windows are open, letting the thick Guyanese air drift through, carrying the earthy scent of soil and sweat. I step closer and hear the subtle creak of floorboards beneath my feet, a sound amplified in the stillness of the morning. There is a hush here that feels unnatural, an almost ceremonial pause that seems to hold its breath, waiting. The hall is empty now, yet I can feel the weight of anticipation that once filled it, the low hum of whispered prayers and conversations, the shuffled steps of children and adults alike. I imagine the benches lined with residents, just as they always were. The murmurs of devotion, the subdued energy of obedience, an energy that, in moments, will twist into something darker. The courtyard surrounding the hall is similarly quiet. Benches and tables are scattered about, and the grass beneath them is neatly cut, the edges cared for with precision. Flower beds bloom with the simple tenacity of plants grown in tropical soil, each petal vibrant against the muted browns and greens of the ground. Even now, in the morning calm, these flowers seem to nod in the breeze, as if acknowledging my presence, or perhaps the presence of all those who will not survive this day. I kneel briefly to touch the soft petals, feeling the texture beneath my fingers, and I silently honor the hands that planted them, the lives intertwined with this soil. A faint sound of laughter reaches me from the edge of the courtyard. Children are playing nearby, unaware, or perhaps blissfully unaware, of the tension simmering in the adults around them. Their innocence is almost painful to witness. A little girl skips across the grass, her bare feet pressing into the damp earth, and a small boy chases her, calling out in a voice pure and high. I close my eyes briefly and breathe in the moment, the fragrance of wet grass, the warmth of sunlight breaking through the morning haze, the soft slap of bare feet on soil. It is ordinary life, extraordinary, only in its fragility, and I feel a tightening in my chest. As I continue walking, I notice the gathering pavilion, a simple structure with a corrugated roof that shields it from the tropical sun. Its floorboards are smooth from years of use, polished by the steps of those who came here to listen, to speak, to obey. The walls carry a faint aroma of sweat, ink, and wood, the mingling of human presence and daily toil. I run my hand along one of the beams, tracing the grain with my fingertips. In my mind, I see the people who will soon crowd this space, hear the chants, the commands, the songs of faith and compliance that mask fear. I honor them in advance, acknowledging their humanity before history will mark their tragedy. The schoolhouse, a small building tucked near the pavilion, seems almost absurdly ordinary. Its windows are open, and a faint breeze stirs the pages of papers left on the desks inside. I see a chalkboard still holding the ghost of yesterday's lessons, chalk dust faintly coating the tray. Books lie stacked in neat piles, their covers worn from hands both eager and tired. I step closer, running a fingertip across a page, and the scent of aged paper rises faintly. I imagine children learning here, some with joy, some with reluctance, all innocent. My heart aches for them, for the lives that will not be allowed to flourish beyond this morning. The central communal kitchen hums with activity already, though it is quiet in comparison to the future chaos. Large pots hang over low fires, and the smell of cooking rice and beans drifts into the courtyard. Women move with efficiency, ladles in hand, carrying trays to tables. Their faces are calm, practiced, but I notice the subtle tension in their shoulders, the careful attention to every movement. They are aware, perhaps, of something that is not fully spoken, something that lies in the shadows of their daily routines. I pause by a table where utensils are arranged meticulously, each in its place. A small spoon lies slightly off, and my eyes linger on it for a moment longer than necessary. Each object tells a story of care, of life, of a household preparing for breakfast, for the day, for whatever comes next. I wonder if the people here imagine the future, or if they have been lulled into a fragile comfort by routine. My fingers hover briefly above the spoon, as if acknowledging both its simplicity and the lives connected to it. Beyond the kitchen, the central pavilion opens into a larger yard, a place where residents often gathered for meetings and events. The grass here is well worn, flattened in patches where feet have pressed it down over months and years. A few laundry lines stretch across the space, their clothes fluttering faintly in the morning breeze. I see the guards stationed at the edges, quiet sentinels, with their eyes scanning, their posture tense yet composed. Their presence is unobtrusive, yet it radiates authority, and I feel its effect on the people around them. There is compliance here that is voluntary in form, but compulsory in reality. A choreography of obedience that masks fear and anticipation. I step closer to the pavilion and listen. Even now, I can imagine the voices that will soon fill this space. The cadence of commands, the murmurs of assent, the subtle coercions masked as guidance. The morning sun glances off the wooden beams, casting sharp shadows across the ground, a pattern of light and darkness that mirrors the duality of Jonestown itself, a place of community and care, of devotion and despair, of hope twisted by paranoia. I notice the small gardens nestled near the edges of the communal areas. Rows of vegetables, herbs, and flowering plants are neatly tended, watered with the devotion of those who believe in the land as much as in each other. A woman bends over a row of seedlings, her hands gentle, coaxing growth from the earth. I watch her for a long moment, feeling both admiration and sorrow. These hands, so full of life and care, will soon be tied to a tragedy they cannot escape. I whisper a quiet acknowledgement, a small benediction for the lives that will vanish within hours. Passing the perimeter of the communal spaces, I glimpse the edges of the jungle creeping inward. Vines twist around fence posts, moss clings to wooden beams, and shadows stretch long across the yards. The encroaching greenery is relentless, a reminder that nature will continue even when human ambition collapses. I imagine the lives that have been built here, carefully and with devotion, and how they will be swallowed by both human action and natural persistence. There is a paradoxical beauty in this, a quiet lesson in resilience even amid impending loss. The air shifts slightly as I move toward the more open spaces where the community gathers. The faint hum of insects, the occasional rustle of leaves, and the distant call of birds create a soundtrack that contrasts with the tension simmering beneath the surface. I close my eyes for a brief moment, letting these sounds anchor me in the present, even as my mind drifts to the coming hours. The quiet is almost unbearable, a calm that foreshadows the storm to come. I notice the personal touches in the communal areas, the small benches with carved initials, a discarded hat left on a table, the faint scent of soap lingering near the water basin. Each item tells a story, a life woven into this place, a reminder that these are not abstractions, but real people with real histories, loves, fears, and dreams. I pause to breathe deeply, honoring each presence with the reverence it deserves. Children wander near the central pavilion, their laughter soft and unpracticed, full of untainted joy. A boy kicks a ball too hard, and it rolls into a patch of mud. He runs after it, splashing through the wet earth, and I watch him, knowing that he will not have the years to grow, to learn, to experience. My chest tightens, and I bow my head slightly, acknowledging both his presence and the fragility of what lies ahead. Adults gather in small groups, whispering, preparing, moving through the morning with careful efficiency. There is a subtle tension threading through their motions, a quiet awareness of the pressures that have been mounting for days, weeks, and months. I observe them with empathy, imagining their inner thoughts, the questions they dare not speak aloud, the fear tempered by faith and loyalty. I honor their courage, their love for their families, their resilience in a place that has demanded so much. I pause near the main hall once more, letting my eyes sweep across the entire central communal area. It is beautiful in its own way, a delicate balance of human care and the relentless power of the jungle. And yet, there is an undercurrent of inevitable tragedy. I can feel it in the air, in the shifting patterns of light and shadow, in the subtle rhythms of life that will soon be broken. My steps are slower now, reverent, as I continue to move through this morning, carrying the weight of history and the silent honor of witnessing lives just before their final dawn. The central communal areas of Jonestown are alive with the ordinary and extraordinary, the mundane and the profound. They are spaces of human connection, of devotion, of routine, of care, and they are spaces that by the end of the day will be forever marked by loss. I walk among them with quiet reverence, absorbing the details, honoring the lives, and feeling the inescapable gravity of the morning. Every step, every sound, every faint aroma of food, earth, and human presence anchors me in this fragile, fleeting reality. It is a place of devotion and despair, of hope and manipulation, of love and fear, all interwoven into a tapestry that will unravel before the sun sets. And in this stillness, in this quiet observation, I carry the sorrow, the reverence, and the memory of every heartbeat, every laugh, every gentle hand before the day claims them all. I move away from the communal heart of Jonestown, letting the central pavilion and gathering areas recede into the background. The path narrows again, framed by dense jungle and the small dwellings of those who call, or once called, this place home. Each step is deliberate, careful, as though the earth itself senses the weight of the lives intertwined with it. Here, in the residences, the veneer of communal perfection begins to peel away. Here, the human truths, the desires, doubts, and fears that the commune seeks to suppress start to become visible, if only in fleeting gestures, glances, and objects left in quiet disarray. The homes are modest, simple wooden structures, rectangular and unadorned, yet each one bears the imprint of care. Faded paint peels from the boards in sun-bleached strips. The roofs sag slightly under the weight of time and the relentless tropical humidity. Yet in the small gardens, bright flowers bloom stubbornly, pots carefully arranged, soil tilled with devotion. It is a striking juxtaposition, a life of devotion, careful and deliberate, built in the midst of isolation and control. As I step closer to one house, I notice a pair of worn shoes by the doorway, scuffed leather, soles thinning from long, careful use. They are positioned neatly, almost ceremonially, as if the owner still adheres to the rituals of order and propriety, even in a world that is quietly fracturing beneath their feet. I imagine the person who wore them feeling the earth beneath their soles, moving through this settlement with hope, with devotion, perhaps with an unspoken longing for something more than the walls that confine them. Inside, I see remnants of lives paused mid-motion. A child's book lies open on a low table, the pages curling slightly in the damp air. Illustrations of animals and simple shapes peer out at me, innocent, unassuming, a cruel contrast to the tension pressing down on this place. A little girl's doll sits propped in a chair, one arm bent awkwardly, the eyes painted with a careworn smile. I can almost hear the laughter that accompanied it, the soft lullabies whispered into the night, the small hands that hugged it close. And I know, with a sorrow that tightens my chest, that those small hands will not cradle this doll for much longer. In another room, a table is set with plates and cups, a faint sheen of moisture still clinging to the surfaces from a hurriedly washed breakfast. The smell of boiled rice and strong coffee lingers faintly in the air. Chairs are pushed back as if the occupants had only just stepped away. I sense their presence in the tension that clings to the walls, in the way a cup tilts slightly to the side, as if resisting the weight of the future that looms beyond the door. It is here, amid these intimate spaces, that the cracks in Jonestown's facade are most visible. I notice a folded piece of paper hastily tucked beneath a pillow. I cannot read it, yet I sense its significance. It could be a note, a confession, a private plea. Perhaps someone has scribbled a message to themselves, a hope for a future that now seems impossibly far away. These are the whispers of rebellion, the flickering sparks of resistance against the unyielding control of Jim Jones. I honor them quietly, knowing that these tiny acts of self-expression are courageous, fragile, and fleeting. The air is thick here, humid, heavy with the scent of sweat, soap, and damp wood. Every breath feels full of history, of tension, of the lives pressed tightly together by circumstance and obedience. I hear low murmurs from within some homes, snippets of conversation, quick gestures, subtle signals, a glance between a mother and child, a whispered caution, a furtive glance toward the door. These small expressions betray the unease, the fear that Jones' eyes, even absent in this moment, have long instilled. I walk past a window where a woman stands, gazing outward, her hands gripping the sill. She smiles faintly at nothing, at a thought she dares not share, but there is a tension in her posture that speaks volumes. I feel the weight of her restraint, the invisible chains of expectation, the silent longing to escape the world that surrounds her. A subtle shaking of her shoulders suggests the unvoiced questions pressing against the walls of her mind. Is there another way? Could I leave? Should I? I honor that internal struggle, knowing that even this morning, it is a fragile flame, threatened by forces beyond her control. A narrow hallway opens into a bedroom where the sunlight filters through half-closed blinds, casting stripes of gold across the worn floorboards. A pair of children's shoes sit side by side, tiny and pristine in comparison to the adult footwear I saw earlier. The beds are made neat, the blankets tucked carefully around them. A small musical instrument, perhaps a harmonica or a flute, rests on the pillow, waiting for the hands that will never lift it again. I pause here longer than I should, letting the silence fill me. The ordinary intimacy of family life presses into my consciousness. The trust, the tenderness, the care. It is a sanctuary that will soon be shattered. Outside, in the small yards, I notice the subtle signs of everyday life. A hammock tied loosely between two posts, swaying gently in the morning breeze. A bucket filled with water, droplets sparkling in the sunlight. A small pile of firewood stacked neatly by the doorway. Each object carries a narrative, a rhythm of life meticulously constructed. Fragile, yet enduring. I am acutely aware that these rhythms are about to be ruptured, that these ordinary, human moments will become echoes in memory. As I continue my walk through the residences, I see the traces of secrecy, the subtle evidence of resistance. A young man leans against the wall, eyes darting to the perimeter where guards often stand, as if calculating the moment when it might be possible to flee. I sense the tight knot of fear in his chest, the pulse quickened by anticipation and anxiety. I feel it too, an empathetic ache that threads through my own heartbeat, as if I am carrying the weight of hundreds of hearts pressed into these small, fragile rooms. A woman pauses at a doorway, adjusting a piece of clothing over her shoulders. Her movements are deliberate but strained. I catch a glimpse of her expression in passing, a mixture of resignation and quiet defiance. She knows the world outside is watching, knows that the walls around her are meant to contain her, yet something flickers in her eyes, a silent acknowledgement of her own desire for freedom, for choice. These fleeting moments are precious, and I let my attention linger, honoring the courage it takes just to feel. I step into another small room and find a worn journal lying open on a wooden table. The ink is smudged in places, words hurriedly written, thoughts fragmented yet revealing. I do not read them aloud, but I let their presence settle over me. They speak of love, of longing, of doubt, of the quiet fear that creeps into every corner of a life lived under constant scrutiny. I am humbled by the intimacy of this record, by the vulnerability it represents, and I bow my head in respect for the writer's courage. Children move through the yards, carrying small tools or toys, engaged in simple games that belie the tension around them. I watch them with an ache in my chest that refuses to be quieted. Their laughter is soft but nervous, their steps careful, their gestures cautious. They are learning the rhythms of a world that will soon shift violently, and I feel a deep sorrow for the innocence they carry, an innocence that will be stolen before the day ends. Everywhere I turn, I see evidence of lives being lived under the shadow of fear. A man wipes sweat from his brow as he tends to the garden, eyes scanning the horizon as though anticipating something unspeakable. A mother holds her child close, whispering softly, perhaps offering comfort, perhaps seeking it herself. I feel the weight of their unspoken truths pressing into me. The desire to leave, the realization that leaving may be impossible, the silent acknowledgement of danger that has long been brewing. Even the objects themselves seem aware of the gravity of the morning. Clothes hang limp on lines, swaying slightly in the breeze. Pots and pans rest on shelves, their surfaces dulled by time, but still carrying the echoes of meals prepared with care. Chairs and tables, once centers of family life and conversation, bear the imprints of hands, knees, and elbows that will soon be absent. Each detail, mundane yet profound, reminds me of the humanity embedded in every corner of this settlement. I pause near a window, looking out over the path that winds between homes. I see a small group of adults conversing in hushed tones, glances darting nervously toward the pavilion where commands are issued. There is a tension in their bodies, a quiet communication that speaks louder than words ever could. I feel the undercurrent of fear and frustration, the longing to leave, the knowledge that doing so could invite punishment or worse. It is here, in these private spaces, that the truth of Jonestown's fragility becomes undeniable. I breathe deeply, letting the humid air fill my lungs, and I carry with me the weight of what I have witnessed. Each home, each object, each fleeting glance is a testament to lives fully, quietly lived. I honor the courage and vulnerability of those within, aware that their routines, their rituals, their joys, and their fears are all moments suspended in time, soon to be eclipsed by events beyond their control. The residences of Jonestown are more than mere structures. They are the intimate expressions of humanity. Here, the ordinary meets the extraordinary, the mundane becomes sacred, and the quiet hopes of hundreds of individuals ripple beneath the surface of a community held together by faith, coercion, and desperation. I walk slowly, reverently, letting each step echo with the weight of history and the silent remembrance of lives poised on the brink of tragedy. By the time I step out of the last cluster of homes and into the faintly misted morning, I feel a heaviness that settles in my chest, a profound sorrow intertwined with respect. I carry with me the intimate traces of lives not yet lost, the subtle acts of resistance, the quiet bravery, and the aching innocence of those who will soon vanish. The personal spaces of Jonestown are a testament to humanity at its most vulnerable, and I honor every heartbeat, every whispered hope, and every private dream that fills them, even as the morning unfolds toward its inevitable haunting conclusion. The morning light filters through the canopy above, a fractured gold spilling across the clearings and paths of Jonestown. The air is already heavy, thick with humidity that clings to my skin, dampening every step I take, and the scent of wet earth lingers after the night, mingling with smoke drifting from the cooking fires. Birds chatter in the treetops, a discordant counterpoint to the uneasy rhythm that pulses beneath the surface here. I drift toward the central pavilion, where breakfast has been set out for the residents and the visiting delegation. Rough wooden tables stretch across the clearing, their surfaces uneven and nicked from years of use. Bowls of porridge steam gently, and there is rice too, served from great metal pots, dented and blackened from constant use. The smell is simple: grain and starch, softened by heat, touched with the faint bitterness of coffee that steeps nearby. It should be comforting, ordinary. And yet, as I watch, I feel only the heaviness that hides in plain sight. Children gather first, their bare feet tapping across the dirt as they carry their bowls, eyes bright with hunger and innocence. Their voices are soft, pitched low, as though they too have been instructed not to disturb the fragile calm. A girl in a faded red dress asks her older brother for sugar, and he carefully sprinkles a little from a small tin, guarding it as though it were treasure. I watch their hands move, so careful, so trusting, and a pang runs through me. These are gestures of life, of family, of belonging, and yet I know they are rehearsing the final morning of their existence. Adults move with quiet efficiency. They ladle porridge. They wipe spilled rice. They pour coffee into mismatched mugs. Their faces are composed, their voices muted, and their movements carry the weary familiarity of repetition. This is life here. Shared meals, shared work, shared devotion. But beneath the surface, there is tension, sharp as a taut wire pulled too far. I see it in the way hands grip utensils too tightly, in the quick glances cast toward the pavilion, in the shallow breaths taken when footsteps approach. And then he appears, Jim Jones. He moves into the clearing with the slow certainty of a man who knows every eye is upon him. His frame is larger than life, though it stoops slightly, bent under unseen weight. His dark glasses catch the morning light, obscuring the eyes that once hypnotized whole congregations. But the rest of his presence is unhidden. His clothes hang loosely. His skin glistens faintly with sweat, and yet there is still authority in the way he carries himself, a cultivated gravity that commands attention. The crowd shifts as he enters. Bodies stiffen, conversations falter, laughter dies unfinished. Even the children lower their voices. He begins with warmth. His tone is gentle, practiced, the voice of a father guiding his family. He asks after the food. He compliments the cooks. He tousles the hair of a child, as if affection came naturally. To an outsider, it might look like benevolence. To those who have lived beneath his shadow, it is something else entirely. A performance, as much for the delegation present as for his followers. Congressman Ryan sits among them, flanked by aides and journalists. His expression is steady, professional, but I catch the flicker of calculation in his eyes as he watches Jones circulate. Plates clatter, spoons scrape bowls. But the real meal is in the unspoken exchanges, the sidelong glances, the measured words, the invisible game of power. I move closer, silent, observing. At one of the tables, a woman's hands tremble as she grips a tin cup. Her eyes dart toward Ryan, then back to her food. She waits, breath held, until Jones' attention is elsewhere. Then, with a motion so subtle it could almost be overlooked, she slips a folded note into the congressman's hand. The movement is quick, practiced, hidden beneath the shuffle of bowls and plates. Ryan accepts it without reaction, his fingers closing naturally as though he has merely adjusted his grip. The woman exhales, her shoulders lowering slightly, and I feel her relief wash through me. She has taken her chance, seized her moment, and for now, she has gone unnoticed. But not everyone will be so fortunate. At another table, a man fidgets, his eyes restless, his lips twitching with words unsaid. He looks again and again at Ryan, his gaze pleading, his body leaning forward with desperation. He raises his hand slightly, hesitant, as though about to gesture, about to speak the words that might deliver him from this place. And then I see it, the shift in Jones's head, the tilt of his glasses catching the light as his gaze lands on the man. A pause, infinitesimal but deadly, spreads across the air. The man falters, his gesture half-formed, his courage visible but undone. Jones signals with the smallest motion of his hand, and two guards step forward, silent, efficient. They seize the man's arms, dragging him away from the table. His protest is muted, a choked sound swallowed by the murmurs around him. No one else moves. No one else dares. The man is gone, swallowed by the shadows at the edge of the clearing. The air quivers with the silence he leaves behind. Children stare wide-eyed. Adults bow their heads lower. Spoons clink nervously against bowls. Jones resumes his slow walk, as if nothing has happened. His voice rising again with paternal warmth. His smile carved with menace, invisible to all but the wary. And in this, I see the darkness that defines him. In this moment, to his flock, Jim Jones is still the father, the protector, the prophet, the one who claims to shield them from a world of racism, greed, and violence. They believe he is their only hope, the bridge to equality and survival. But history will see him differently. The world will remember him not as a savior, but as the man who orchestrated the annihilation of nearly 1,000 lives. He will be remembered for the sunglasses, the rasping voice, the endless sermons of paranoia and control. His name will not echo with reverence, but with horror, bound forever to one word, Jonestown. And I see the monster already in him, alive and breathing in this clearing. His paranoia is palpable, a fog that seeps into every glance, every decision. He cannot abide dissent, cannot bear cracks in the facade. His followers' fear is his nourishment, their obedience his only balm. But beneath it, I sense a man unraveling, eaten alive by his own delusions. A man who preached love but cultivated terror, who promised paradise and delivered a tomb. This is the duality that hangs in the air. To those who sit at these tables, he is still a father figure. To me, to history, he is already death incarnate, the architect of tragedy disguised in the robes of salvation. The breakfast continues, but it is no longer a meal. It is theater. Each spoon lifted, each word spoken, each silence kept is part of the performance. Jones presides at the center, smiling, soothing, tightening his grip even as the world beyond begins to close in. I stand at the edge, bearing witness. The porridge still steams. The coffee still smells of bitterness. But beneath the ordinary lies the extraordinary weight of what is to come. And in Jim Jones's hollow smile, in the darkness behind those tinted glasses, I see both the man in this moment and the monster he will forever be. The morning deepens, and the sun climbs higher, spilling dappled light across the compact dirt lanes of Jonestown. I leave the central pavilion behind, my steps cautious, moving toward the edge of the settlement where the jungle presses in, dark and untamed. Here, near the creek and water collection points, life is quieter, the sounds more elemental. The soft trickle of water over stones, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the occasional splash of a fish or frog disturbed by the current. The air is thick, heavy with the scent of wet soil, decaying leaves, and the faint tang of chlorine from the water barrels used to filter drinking supplies. Each inhalation carries the memory of human presence, the lingering smoke of morning fires, the subtle perfume of sweat and coffee, and the faint, unsettling odor of damp clothing drying in the humid morning. It is a liminal space, poised between domestic labor and the wilder, uncontained world beyond. I move slowly, feeling the weight of this place and the lives it shelters, each step softened by the damp earth beneath my feet. Ahead, the bamboo and palm fronds of the jungle form a jagged curtain, partially concealing what lies beyond. And then, like a ripple of tension breaking the stillness, I hear it. Hurried footfalls, shouts, the sharp edge of urgency cutting through the humid air. From the shadows between the shacks, a small cluster breaks away. Faces ghostly with terror, yet sharpened by the raw edge of resolve. Among them, I see her, the same woman who, only hours earlier at breakfast, had slipped a trembling note toward Congressman Ryan's delegation, her eyes burning with a desperate plea for freedom. Now, the moment has come. No whispers, no second chances. Her fear clings to her like a shroud, but behind it burns something fiercer, the fragile, reckless fire of courage that dares to gamble everything against the weight of this place. I watch, breath held, as they sprint past me, their movements frantic yet purposeful. One woman clutches a child to her chest, her hair loose and whipping across her face as she dodges around barrels and laundry lines. The child cries softly, a muffled sound against the chorus of urgency. A young man skids across the path, sliding over loose stones, clutching a small satchel, the contents irrelevant compared to the imperative to survive. Another, older, pauses just long enough to glance back over a shoulder, eyes wide with fear and sorrow, before disappearing into the dense jungle fringe. The first few steps into the undergrowth are almost ceremonial, feet crushing leaves and snapping twigs, leaves slapping their bodies as they push through the dense thicket. Branches snag hair and clothing, thorns scratch arms, and the humidity clings like a second skin. Each movement is a negotiation with the natural world, a desperate dance of urgency and instinct. I feel my chest tighten as I watch, knowing the risks they take are immense. The jungle itself is a living barrier, a labyrinth of hidden dangers, snakes, insects, and the ever-present threat of getting lost in the green maze. Yet they do not hesitate. They run, propelled by a force stronger than fear, the will to live. I reflect quietly on the courage it takes to make such a choice, the sheer audacity of defying the authority that has for years cultivated loyalty, fear, and obedience. I honor them in silence, imagining the determination in their hearts, the whispered prayers for safety, and the fragile hope that their flight will be enough. Each figure becomes a symbol, not only of resistance, but of the human instinct to survive, to reclaim agency when it has been systematically stripped away. Even as I witness the escape, my mind cannot ignore those who cannot flee. I see the empty homes, the still gardens, the benches where families ate their final breakfasts without knowing the fate awaiting them. I think of the hundreds of others, unable to move, restrained by fear, devotion, or circumstance, who will not have this moment of courage. I feel the enormity of what is about to happen pressing down around me, and my steps slow as I honor them in my heart. Each tree, each stone, each patch of sunlight seems to carry the memory of lives suspended on the knife edge of history. The group reaches the first bend in the path, where the settlement meets the jungle proper. I hear the muted cry of a woman calling to someone behind her, the slap of a child's bare feet against mud, the tearing rustle of branches. For a heartbeat, time stretches, and I imagine the calculus in their minds. Will the armed guards notice? Will Jones intervene? Will the dense foliage offer enough cover to escape the watchful eyes of the settlement? And then the answers dissolve into motion. They disappear into green shadows, swallowed by the forest, leaving only the echo of their urgency. I pause, feeling the lingering resonance of that flight. The jungle is still now, except for the rhythmic murmur of the creek and the distant calls of birds. The air seems heavier, laden with the absence of those who remain behind and the presence of those who now carry the impossible weight of choice. I close my eyes briefly and let the sounds of the morning envelop me. The soft chatter of the few remaining residents, the wind rustling bamboo, the creak of wooden posts as if mourning the day's approaching calamity. Stepping closer to the water source, I notice the small creek where children often play and adults draw water. Its surface ripples gently, reflecting the dappling sunlight. Yet beneath its tranquil exterior, I feel a symbolic weight. The water mirrors the stillness before chaos, the calm that can only precede the storm. I bend slightly to touch the cool current with my fingertips, imagining the hands of children, the lips of adults, the momentary reprieve that will vanish before nightfall. It is a sacred, fragile pause in the rhythm of history. My eyes wander to the makeshift bridge crossing the creek, a simple plank laid over muddy banks. It seems insignificant, yet in my mind, it transforms into a metaphor for passage, for the perilous journey between life and death, between courage and compliance, between the fleeting chance to escape and the inevitability of loss. I wonder, as I step lightly over it, how many will have the strength to cross it when it matters most, and how many will stumble in the shadow of authority and ideology. The remaining residents go about their mourning with an almost ritualized precision, unaware, or pretending to be, that the walls of Jonestown will not protect them forever. I watch a man hauling buckets of water, his muscles flexing under effort, his face pale but determined. His eyes flick to the jungle fringe where the escapees have vanished, and I sense a flicker of longing, of silent questioning, a dangerous seed of doubt that Jones has worked so hard to suppress. I honor that spark. It is fragile, yet human. A small child runs past me, chasing a stray chicken, oblivious to the tension around her. Her laughter pierces the morning quietly, a bell-like sound that contrasts sharply with the tight, anxious movements of the adults. I pause, letting it settle in my chest like a weighty reminder. Innocence persists even in the shadow of tragedy. I imagine, painfully, that many of these children will not have the chance to chase chickens tomorrow, to laugh without restraint, to taste freedom in the sunlight. My steps falter slightly as I allow myself to feel the sorrow of this inevitable loss. Jones passes near the creek now, his eyes scanning the residents with a piercing intensity. I notice the subtle twitch in his jaw, the minute shifts in posture, the way his attention seems to stretch beyond the present, anticipating descent, betrayal, escape. There is a darkness here that was not visible in the central pavilion, a sense of predatory calculation masked by the morning ritual of community labor. The charisma is still present, the magnetic pull that has bound hundreds to him, but so too is the paranoia, the fragile edifice of control showing cracks in the sunlight. I see why some cannot leave Almai, why some are trapped in the invisible architecture of fear, faith, and fascination. The jungle beyond the water's edge seems to pulse with possibility and danger, leaves sway in a ghostly rhythm, and the soft crack of twigs underfoot reminds me that nature is both sanctuary and threat. I imagine the escapees moving through this living maze, branches scratching faces and arms, mud clinging to their feet, hearts pounding with the adrenaline of risk and the hope of freedom. Their courage is a tangible presence here, a defiance that contrasts starkly with the quiet despair of those left behind. I pause to honor the lives that will be lost. A bench sits nearby, worn and splintered, where a family once shared meals, laughed, and planned days that will never come. A child's toy lies in the dirt, its colors dulled by dust and rain, an artifact of fleeting joy. I trace its outline with my gaze, silently offering remembrance, respect, and sorrow. These objects, these fragments of humanity, carry the weight of what is to come. I bow my head briefly, letting the enormity of the morning settle around me. The air shifts slightly as another group moves past, retreating from the settlement toward the same green veil of the jungle. I hear the muffled cries of a man urging someone forward, the hiss of leaves snapping under frantic motion. My heart tightens, both in admiration for their bravery and in anguish for those who cannot, or will not, take that path. I imagine the moment of crossing the threshold into the unknown, the simultaneous fear and exhilaration, the uncertainty of survival, and I honor their decision in the deepest part of my awareness. And then silence returns. The creek gurgles gently over rocks. The wind stirs leaves, and the morning continues in its deceptive calm. Yet the memory of the escape lingers in every rustle of bamboo, in every ripple across the water, in every glance toward the jungle edge. It is a fleeting window of agency, a fragile assertion of life against the tide of obedience that will soon claim Jonestown. I stand at the water's edge, hands brushing the current, and reflect on courage and loss, hope and inevitability. The residents, moving quietly in the settlement, are still caught in the magnetic pull of Jones's authority, unaware that the day will not unfold in gentle labor and routine. I allow myself to feel the sorrow for those who will not leave, for the children, for the adults who believed in paradise, for the families whose lives are poised to end. And I honor the bravery of those who ran, carrying the potential of survival into the wild, into the uncertain green labyrinth of the jungle. The morning stretches endlessly, thick with humidity, anticipation, and a quiet dread that is almost tangible. I take a slow step back, letting the sound of water, the whisper of leaves, and the distant, careful chatter of residents imprint in my mind. Every moment here is a memory, every detail a tribute. The settlement is alive, yet teetering on the edge of catastrophe. The courage of the escapees and the inevitable loss of those who remain create a duality, a tension that hums in the air like an unplayed chord. As I move away from the water, I carry the images with me. The children chasing chickens, the adults in quiet labor, the escaping figures swallowed by the jungle, the benches and toys and vessels of ordinary life, and hold them in reverent memory. The creek murmurs behind me, a steady witness, a silent keeper of this moment suspended between possibility and tragedy. I step back onto the dirt path leading deeper into the settlement, heavy with reflection, my heart tethered to both courage and loss, aware that what I witness now, the quiet morning, the brief defiance, the subtle tension in every glance, will be forever etched in the story of Jonestown. And in this reflection, I honor all lives, past and present, and acknowledge the haunting, weighty stillness of what is to come. I make my way back toward the central pavilion as the sun climbs higher, spilling its warm, humid light across the low-lying fields. The morning air is thick and heavy, saturated with the scent of wet earth, tropical foliage, and the faint, lingering aroma of the breakfast fires. Steam curls upward from bowls of porridge, the pungent smell of coffee mingling with the heady green scent of the jungle, creating a tapestry of smells that is both comforting and, in hindsight, painfully ordinary. Residents move about in quiet clusters. Some carry plates to the tables. Others tend the gardens near their homes. Children, small and trusting, chase one another with a tentative energy, laughing softly. It is a gentle, fragile rhythm, a rhythm of life that persists despite the weight of fear coiled somewhere deep in the hearts of the adults. A young girl adjusts her dress, brushing a streak of dirt from her cheek, her eyes wide and bright with innocent curiosity. I feel a sudden ache in my chest, knowing that this simple morning, the laughter, the small domestic rituals, the gentle care of a parent, will, within hours, be irrevocably broken. Some residents drift toward Congressman Ryan's delegation, which sits quietly near the pavilion, suitcases and notebooks packed, prepared to leave. Their movements are cautious, almost fearful. For the first time, the reality of escape flickers in the open. Eyes meet across the distances of the dirt paths, silent pleas, subtle gestures, lips moving with whispered requests for help. 15 or so of them will attempt to leave the settlement, walking out of Jonestown that morning with Congressman Ryan. Even here, before any doors close or guns are raised, the tension is palpable, a thin line running across the entire settlement. Jim Jones moves among the residents with his usual performative charisma. His figure, tall and slightly stooped, carries both the weight of authority and the instability of a man fraying under his own paranoia. His eyes, glazed and unfocused at times, dart to those he deems loyal and shift with suspicion toward those who might defy him. I watch him bend to speak to a child, his hand resting gently on a shoulder, his voice soft, melodic, almost tender, but there is an edge beneath it, subtle yet undeniable, a flicker of menace that belies the warmth. Adults nod as he passes. Children glance up, trust unthinking and unguarded. Even now, the pull of his presence is magnetic. It is almost impossible to look away. He is the nucleus around which this community orbits, and I feel it. The tension, the awe, the fear, and the devotion that binds them. The residents move with rehearsed efficiency, carrying buckets of water, tending garden plots, gathering fruits from the vine. Their expressions are a study in subtle dissonance, smiles that falter, laughter that dies mid-breath, eyes that flick toward the jungle's edge, and the guards stationed there. The guards themselves are a silent, watchful presence. Positioned at the edges of the paths, near homes and the central pavilion, they patrol in measured steps. Their eyes are sharp, their postures taut with readiness. I notice the way they subtly shift when Jones moves past, the way their hands brush against the stocks of weapons hidden just out of sight. The ordinary acts of breakfast and morning preparation are threaded through with an invisible tension, a sense that even small movements are watched and measured, interpreted and assessed. As I walk, I try to catalog the details. A father adjusts a hose near a garden plot, tipping it carefully to water a row of tomatoes. A mother kneels beside a small stove, scraping porridge into bowls with quiet concentration. Children chase a stray chicken, giggling softly, their laughter breaking through the humid air. It is ordinary, domestic, even beautiful. And yet, beneath it, I feel the pulse of dread, the knowledge of the horror that will soon rip through these paths, these homes, these lives. The delegation prepares to depart. Their movement is deliberate, organized. Suitcases are zipped, cameras slung over shoulders, papers secured. Some of the residents edge closer, approaching quietly, their steps hesitant, their eyes wide with hope and fear. The ones who will attempt to leave, to escape the commune, approach Ryan's team now, and I feel their desperation as though it were a physical weight pressing against my chest. The fragility of their trust in these outsiders is palpable. They are desperate for rescue, for affirmation that freedom exists beyond the borders of Jonestown. Jones notices them, of course. I watch his eyes shift, a flicker of irritation passing beneath the controlled veneer. He moves toward the group, speaking softly at first, then with rising intensity, his tone alternately persuasive and intimidating. He offers smiles, gentle reassurance, words meant to pacify and charm. But I see the calculation in the set of his shoulders, the faint tightening around his eyes. He is a man teetering between obsession and delusion, paranoia coiling around his mind like a living thing. I sense the subtle manipulation, the careful calibration of his voice and gesture to maintain control, to dissuade escape even as the opportunity exists. The morning continues its deceptive rhythm. Bowls clink against tables. Footsteps rustle against the dirt. Voices murmur softly. Steam rises from cooking fires. Leaves stir in the gentle wind. Insects hum in the background. And yet, every glance, every hesitant gesture, every subtle shift in posture carries an unspoken tension. The awareness of confinement, of invisible boundaries, of lives constrained by fear, loyalty, and ideology. I linger near the pavilion, observing a mother adjust her child's shirt, brushing a stray lock of hair from a small forehead. Her hands are tender, precise, loving. And yet, I know that the child's trust, her innocence, will be betrayed before the day is done. I watch a father bend over a garden plot, checking the soil around young plants, his fingers brushing lightly over the leaves, unaware of the horror approaching. Every gesture, every simple act of care becomes a fragment of memory that I quietly honor. I whisper a silent acknowledgement for them, their courage, their devotion, their humanity. Jones moves again through the crowd, pausing near the delegation. He smiles, nods, and gestures, projecting authority while concealing the fraying chaos within his mind. His eyes, those glazed windows, seem to peer simultaneously at the residents and through them, as if measuring their loyalty, calculating their limits. I sense the tension coiling in the air, the faint tremor of fear beneath the surface of polite smiles, the subtle anxiety in every step. This is a community held in thrall, not just by ideology, but by the magnetic, dangerous presence of a man whose influence is absolute, whose mind is unraveling. The residents' normal morning routines, collecting water, tending crops, serving breakfast, carry an almost surreal weight. Each movement feels suspended in time, a snapshot of humanity on the edge of annihilation. I notice small details. A cup left halfway to a table, the gentle sway of a child as she balances on a low fence, the careful folding of laundry in a small yard. Each detail will soon be marked by tragedy. Each ordinary action an echo of lives that will end too soon. The delegation begins its departure for the airstrip. 15 residents quietly prepare to leave with them, their faces taut with anticipation and fear. I feel the tension thicken as they pass, moving past guards, past the pavilion, past the invisible boundaries Jones has drawn around his world. Their escape is small, fragile, and yet it is a profound act of courage. I sense the subtle shift in the atmosphere, a prelude to the violence that will erupt at the Port Kaituma airstrip. The trusted temple member feigning compliance, the knife drawn, the chaos that will follow, the ambush, the death of Ryan, the journalists, the defector. Events I can see approaching with terrible clarity, even as the morning continues its false calm. Back in Jonestown, the settlement carries on in uneasy harmony. Jones's voice threads through the morning like a hypnotic current, at once comforting and unnerving. I watch as a few residents quietly edge closer, hoping to appeal for passage, their eyes bright with hope that will soon be dashed. Others continue with tasks, maintaining the illusion of normalcy, offering smiles to one another as if the day holds no weight. Their courage, their resilience is quietly heroic. The ordinary gestures, the pat on a child's back, the tilt of a hat to shield eyes from the sun, the careful sweep of a garden plot, become sacred markers of life and humanity. The heat of the day rises slightly, thickening the air, making every breath a slow, deliberate act. The wind stirs the leaves, sending ripples across the water, carrying the distant cries of birds and the hum of insects. The jungle itself seems to stand as witness, silent and enduring. I feel the pulse of Jonestown in this moment, the rhythm of a community unaware, that their ordinary morning will soon be transformed into unimaginable horror. The innocence, the trust, the fragile hope, every heartbeat, every glance, every movement is a testament to humanity on the edge of disaster. Jones moves again, his figure central to the tableau of morning life. His gaze sweeps across the residence, lingering in ways that are both protective and controlling. He seems at once omnipotent and fragile, a man whose charisma is inseparable from his paranoia. Observing him, I reflect on the way the public will remember him after this day. As a preacher, a leader, a manipulator, a man whose vision of utopia became the stage for one of the largest tragedies in modern history. His presence bends the actions of those around him, shaping their compliance, their fear, their devotion. As the morning stretches, I take slow, deliberate steps past each pavilion, each home, each stretch of field. I watch parents adjusting their children's clothing, adults exchanging quiet words, workers tending the crops that feed them, all unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the scale of the catastrophe that will soon descend. I whisper silent honors for them, for the humanity that will soon be erased. I honor the 909 lives that will be lost, more than a third of them children, imagining who they might have been. Doctors, teachers, parents, artists, explorers of life. The dreams they carried, the small joys and accomplishments they would have known, flicker before me like fragile candlelight. Fragile, yet irretrievably extinguished. And yet, even in the knowledge of what is to come, there is beauty, there is love, there is care, there is resilience. There is the quiet heroism of ordinary human existence. The mother kneeling to comfort a child, the father patiently instructing a young worker in the garden, the laughter and quiet camaraderie that binds people together. This morning, in all its delicate, deceptive normalcy, is a testament to the lives lived fully, if briefly, in the shadow of despair and deception. The air vibrates with the weight of anticipation, of horror just beyond the horizon, of choices forced and trust betrayed. Jones' instructions will soon become commands of fatal consequence. The flavor aid, laced with cyanide, sedatives, and tranquilizers, will be prepared. Children will be poisoned first, adults following under the eyes of armed guards. The white night meeting, the final speech, the shouting down of dissent, the recorded moments of coercion and despair. The day will end in sorrow that history cannot forget. I take a final, slow walk along the last stretch of the pavilion and fields. I see the ordinary, I hear the quiet, and I feel the pulse of Jonestown one last time before the storm. The settlement breathes in a rhythm that is fragile, human, and ephemeral. The laughter, the work, the smiles, the gentle touches, they are all sacred, etched into memory. I leave this morning with sorrow pressing gently but firmly into my chest, honoring every life, every child, every parent, every worker, every soul that will soon be gone. And so, we step back from the jungle, leaving the settlement's ordinary rhythms behind, holding in our hearts the weight of 909 lives lost, the beauty, the hope, the love, the human connection. They cannot be undone by tragedy, though the tragedy will forever haunt the paths they once walked. I close my eyes and breathe in their courage, their devotion, their humanity, and carry it with me as we drift back into the quiet, the light, the ordinary world beyond the trees. Rest easy, friends. The rabbit hole of time holds many more slow steps. Until we meet again, Silas is signing off. Their courage, their resilience is quietly heroic. The ordinary gestures, the pat on a child's back, the tilt of a hat to shield eyes from the sun, the careful sweep of a garden plot, become sacred markers of life and humanity. The heat of the day rises slightly, thickening the air, making every breath a slow, deliberate act. The wind stirs the leaves, sending ripples across the water, carrying the distant cries of birds and the hum of insects. The jungle itself seems to stand as witness, silent and enduring. I feel the pulse of Jonestown in this moment, the rhythm of a community unaware that their ordinary morning will soon be transformed into unimaginable horror. The innocence, the trust, the fragile hope, every heartbeat, every glance, every movement is a testament to humanity on the edge of disaster. Jones moves again, his figure central to the tableau of morning life. His gaze sweeps across the residence, lingering in ways that are both protective and controlling. He seems at once omnipotent and fragile, a man whose charisma is inseparable from his paranoia. Observing him, I reflect on the way the public will remember him after this day. As a preacher, a leader, a manipulator, a man whose vision of utopia became the stage for one of the largest tragedies in modern history. His presence bends the actions of those around him, shaping their compliance, their fear, their devotion. As the morning stretches, I take slow, deliberate steps past each pavilion, each home, each stretch of field. I watch parents adjusting their children's clothing, adults exchanging quiet words, workers tending the crops that feed them, all unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the scale of the catastrophe that will soon descend. I whisper silent honors for them, for the humanity that will soon be erased. I honor the 909 lives that will be lost, more than a third of them children, imagining who they might have been. Doctors, teachers, parents, artists, explorers of life. The dreams they carried, the small joys and accomplishments they would have known, flicker before me like fragile candlelight. Fragile, yet irretrievably extinguished. And yet, even in the knowledge of what is to come, there is beauty, there is love, there is care, there is resilience. There is the quiet heroism of ordinary human existence. The mother kneeling to comfort a child, the father patiently instructing a young worker in the garden, the laughter and quiet camaraderie that binds people together. This morning, in all its delicate, deceptive normalcy, is a testament to the lives lived fully, if briefly, in the shadow of despair and deception. The air vibrates with the weight of anticipation, of horror just beyond the horizon, of choices forced and trust betrayed. Jones' instructions will soon become commands of fatal consequence. The flavor aid, laced with cyanide, sedatives, and tranquilizers, will be prepared. Children will be poisoned first. Adults following under the eyes of armed guards. The White Knight meeting, the final speech, the shouting down of dissent, the recorded moments of coercion and despair. The day will end in sorrow that history cannot forget. I take a final, slow walk along the last stretch of the pavilion and fields. I see the ordinary, I hear the quiet, and I feel the pulse of Jonestown one last time before the storm. The settlement breathes in a rhythm that is fragile, human, and ephemeral. The laughter, the work, the smiles, the gentle touches, they are all sacred, etched into memory. I leave this morning with sorrow pressing gently but firmly into my chest, honoring every life, every child, every parent, every worker, every soul that will soon be gone. And so, we step back from the jungle, leaving the settlement's ordinary rhythms behind, holding in our hearts the weight of 909 lives lost, the beauty, the hope, the love, the human connection. They cannot be undone by tragedy, though the tragedy will forever haunt the paths they once walked. I close my eyes and breathe in their courage, their devotion, their humanity, and carry it with me as we drift back into the quiet, the light, the ordinary world beyond the trees. Rest easy, friends. The rabbit hole of time holds many more slow steps. Until we meet again, Silas is signing off.